Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, President Donald Trump and the overwhelming might of our military have significantly dismantled Iran's military capabilities and weakened its nuclear program. Now we are entering the end game. As dawn begins on economic D-Day, the single greatest financial offensive ever marshaled against an adversary. So he says, and we're getting ready to go. I'm going to show you what some other people have said, but just off that right there, do we have a new competition for Baghdad Bob?
This is Baghdad Bob. I mean, look, if the Iranian military is destroyed, why can't we take the Strait of Hormuz? If the Iranian military was destroyed, why are we evacuating our resources from? If the Australian military was destroyed, why aren't we allowing 1,600 family members to return to Bahrain, where they've been evacuated against their will? Why aren't we rebuilding bases? Why are we retrograding out of the Middle East towards Israel and Europe, then returning forces to the Middle East? Why is it that Iran gets to dictate the pace of strategic competition right now on the military basis? So we lost this war. Scott Bessent just can't admit that we lost. This economic offensive he's talking about, first of all, understand that there is no economic offensive. Everybody understands that, right? It's all on hold. Scott Bessent got up there. This is like Dwight Eisenhower. Just imagine this, because he uses D-Day. So let's just pretend he's Dwight Eisenhower for a moment. I know that's a stretch of the imagination. But this is Dwight Eisenhower getting up on June 5th, telling the Germans, we are coming across. I got French, I got Canadians, I got British, I got American. We're coming across sometime. But first, we're going to give you a chance to surrender on your own free will. The Germans are like, well, thank you for warning us. But the difference is when Bessent says he has Canadians, he doesn't have. Has anybody looked at what Mark Carney's saying about America now? Do you understand the state of play? So those Canadians that were on our side that went across the beach at Juneau on D-Day, they ain't there anymore. Where are the Brits? They're not with us. Where are the French? They're not with us. Nobody's with us. We are truly standing alone, and we have no invading force. This is D-Day without any invading force. So we're trying to bluff our way into a German surrender, and that's just not going to happen. He says that he wants Iran standing alone. By the time this charade is complete, which will be sooner rather than later, because it'll become very apparent that nobody in the world is going to jump over to our side. We'll be standing alone. It'll be Scott Bessent standing alone, have to get up on the podium and somehow declare victory and say that D-Day is over, but we never really invaded Europe. And we didn't
somebody who's really excited about Scott Bessent's move is General Jack Keane. And he does seem to have a word for some of those people who may not be over to our side just yet.
We're on a path here to bring Iran to its knees. That's what Secretary Bessent has in mind. He actually talks about it collapsing. The truth is, nobody knows. Where is Iran coming from? They believe they can outlast the United States here. They consider victory surviving. And if that is the only thing that you want to achieve here, they're going to go as far as they possibly can. They don't even know themselves how far they can go. We're going to find out here.
Yeah, I think we are going to find out there. In a separate interview also yesterday, he actually took the other countries to task, which Trump has been doing throughout this. Where are these other countries? We need to be putting more pressure on them, like with Oman, like with Saudi Arabia, or with some of the European countries, that they should be joining us in this effort. But as you suggested, no takers so far.
Again, that's like Eisenhower announcing the invasion of France without securing British, Canadian, and French concurrence. We're invading. Where are your divisions? You never asked us for it. You didn't coordinate with, and you called us bad names. We don't feel like coming to your side. The other thing that, and again, this is very serious because people need to reflect on it, because Bessent was talking about basically decoupling the world from the dollar. He said, you will not benefit from the dollar regime. Vladimir Putin once famously said that it's not Russia that backed away from the dollar. It's the dollar that backed away from Russia. And BRICS has long said that they're not looking for an alternative to the dollar, that they would prefer a world where the dollar was the reserve currency as long as it functioned fairly. But what Bessent is doing right now is backing the dollar away from BRICS, backing the dollar away from the world. The way that the dollar stops becoming the world reserve currency is when the United States doesn't allow it to be used as the world reserve currency. And people need to understand what the ramifications are. What is Scott Bessent saying? Do you understand what happens when we are no longer the petrodollar? When we delink the dollar's existence from a $100 trillion global energy economy? Because that's the thing that allows us to print money. The reason why we can hit print and print out $1 trillion today is that it's just a small percentage of the overall, dollar pool out there because of the global economy. But when the global economy is no longer measured in terms of the dollar, suddenly $1 trillion on the printing press becomes 1,000% of our what we can afford to do, and it changes everything. This will destroy the United States. What Scott Bessent is proposing will destroy the United States. I don't know why. Again, I'm not an economist. I'm just a simple Marine. But there are economists out there, and hopefully they'll be shouting out the top of their lungs that this is literally the destruction of the global economic model that America has imposed on the world since the end of the Second World War. This is the end of it. And we will be standing alone, and you'll only be able to buy a loaf of bread if, in fact, our pathetic little nation can produce a loaf of bread if you take a wheelbarrow full of dollars to it. There are photographs from Weimar Germany back when hyperinflation struck of Germans going to the market with wheelbarrows full of money. That's our future if we allow this kind of stupidity to stand.
And speaking of that, there was also news out this morning that one of the successes that Bessent has been doing to try to destroy the currency, the rial in Iran, has reached a really high level. It's over 2 million rials for a single U.S. dollar today. So there's some impact on that. But then the question is, what impact does that have on Iran on Iranians inside of Iran? Okay, they can't get dollars, but what does that do to their ability to survive and get along as a society?
Well, I mean, it's definitely disruptive. There can be no doubt about that. But Iran's been dealing with this for almost 50 years. This isn't the first time the Iranian currency has suffered a setback vis-a-vis the dollar. When I was there in Iran in 2005, I mean the Iranian currency I purchased, on day one, wasn't worth as much when I left a week later. That's how inflation did it. That was 2005. That's 21 years ago. Iran's still standing. They still have a viable economy. The Iranians will make an adjustment. And the other thing that's important to understand here is that, when the dollar delinks itself from global viability, which is what Bessent's proposing, because the world will not rally around the United States. I just want every American to understand that. The world will not rally around the United States. At the end of the day, Scott Bessent started this standing alone. He will finish standing alone. Zero allies will rally to our cause. Everybody will either remain neutral or join or be standing with Iran. And when that happens, the Iranian currency suddenly gets a threat. The reason why the Iranian currency performs poorly against the dollar is because the dollar is in opposition to it across the board. Every aspect of the strength of the U.S. Treasury Department that Bessent talked about. But when the U.S. Treasury Department becomes irrelevant, then why compare the Iranian currency to the dollar? Now it needs to be compared to the basket of currency that BRICS is proposing to replace the dollar as a global reserve currency. And suddenly the Iranian currency, now backed by the strength of the Iranian economy, looks pretty good. So again, Bessent's just a fool.
Sorry about that. So the next question is, though, what next? Because if the whole purpose of this is allegedly to cause them to surrender, to give in, as President Trump said over the weekend, we're still trying to get a deal. We'll leave aside the fact that we had a deal 2 days before the war started in February. Leave aside the fact that Trump signed the deal in June. I don't know what deal he's looking for right now, but whatever. This is supposed to bring them to their knees to, abjectly surrender, I guess. Well, there are some folks in Washington, D.C. and in Trump's inner circle that are like, you know what? We need to go back and finish this job. Mark Thiessen, who apparently fancies himself a general, wrote this in Washington Post.
Mark Thiessen over at the Washington Post. He writes this: the way to take this option off the table is to act first by launching a final decisive blow against the regime. If Trump were to launch a quick and lethal attack on Iran's leadership, economic and energy infrastructure, and nuclear facilities now, he could credibly declare victory months before the midterms. Josh, what do you think of the odds at this point?
I think the president has been signaling that he's open to doing that, but not particularly interested in barking up that tree right now.
Yeah, not barking up that tree. I think we barked up that tree for the first whatever it is, 150 some odd days. Can we bark up that tree again, and will it work the next time?
No. First of all, that's again, that thinking suggests that Iran is about the Iranian government's about the individuals that hold office instead of the institutions. It's totally disrespectful of the reality that Iran is a constitutional republic, a functioning constitutional republic that has, viable institutions that are more important than the people who fill the slots. Iran will always find people to fill the slots in their institutions of government, which means you'll never topple this government. This government is a government that is linked to, issues of faith. I'd like to talk to Thiessen. I'd like to talk to anybody in the Trump administration. I've said this before, and it's sort of a gross oversimplification of the issue. But if you're going to talk about regime change in Iran, first answer me the following questions. Who is Ali? Who is Hassan? Who is Hussein? And what is Karbala? And if you can't answer those questions, then don't talk about regime change in Iran, because what I just talked about is the core concept of martyrdom that is enshrined in the theological philosophy of Twelverism, the kind of the Shia, the Twelver Shia that's practiced by Iran. Why does this matter? I don't know. Vilayat faqih, the governance of the supreme jurisprudence. If you don't understand what I'm saying, and I'm just touching on it superficially, then you might think there's a possibility of regime change. How do you change a regime? By martyring their supreme leader in a nation that is built on the concept of martyrdom. When Hussein was killed by the forces of Yazid at Karbala, he enshrined the concept of martyrdom. When people there celebrate Ashura and they march in Arba'in, if you don't know what Ashura and Arba'in is, then shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. This is the kind of ignorance that exists. So there is no quick move to collapse the regime. That simply will not happen. We already tried to collapse it. Here's this big secret. Every day that we continue the war, we get weaker. We fire ammunition that we can't replace. Please understand, people, that every day that goes on, Iran gets stronger. They're producing more missiles and more drones than they're expending. Iran is stronger today than they were when the war started. That is an absolute certainty. We are far weaker today than when the war. So if the moment Trump strikes an economic target in Iran, understand this: Iran will take out the totality of the regional energy production infrastructure. And when that happens, the global economy, including America's economy, collapses. They said, Trump's not barking up that tree. That's why, because somebody got to him and stopped him before he escalated further, said, if you do this, it's irreversible. Irreversible. The global economy collapses.
In fact, one of the, who knows who inside may have told him that, which helped him avoid that, what he said was going to be the biggest strike since World War II. Thank God that didn't happen. But as long as you got guys like Mark Thiessen going on, talking about on Fox News or in Washington Post, he's still going to be thinking about that. Well, General Rezai from the IRGC went on Iranian television and said, yeah, if you do that, Mr. President, you might want to consider this.
If Trump decides to take further action, our response, our retaliation, will be seismic. First, we will tell all neighboring countries and countries around the world not to join the United States in its economic war. Any country that takes part in imposing economic restrictions on us will be regarded as an enemy. Of course, we will first negotiate with them. We will hold talks and tell them to step aside and distance themselves from the United States. But if they do not act, we will strike.
And do you think that's just an empty threat?
No, because they've actually struck. People need to take a look at what happened to Kuwait this last go-around before Trump was walked away from his massive strike. The reason why he was walked away is that the Kuwaitis called up and said, we're one or two cycles of strikes from disappearing as a modern nation state. Iran has taken out our desalinization capability and our energy production capability. If they hit us again, we will have no ability to produce electricity. We'll have no ability to produce clean water, and we die. That was where Kuwait was. And the Saudis looked at that and said, well, that's where we're going to be too. And the Bahrainis went, we're already almost there. And the Qataris went, yeah, us too. And the United Arab Emirates went, yeah, they sort of zeroed in on us. And the entire region turned to the United States and said, stop, we're not supporting this anymore because you're literally killing us. Iran will kill us. We will disappear. Yes, you may do harm to Iran. But, the last time I checked, Iran had more, indigenous supplies of water than the entire, Gulf Arab region altogether. Iran's industrial infrastructure, its energy production infrastructure is a lot more diversified and has been, conditioned for this reality. Iran's been preparing for this conflict with the United States now for 3 decades. So to think that they sat there and went, yeah, we're getting ready to fight a major world power that has long-range standoff strike capacity. So we're going to put all of our energy capacity into just well-defined areas that you can hit and destroy, and you can take us off the grid. Iran has prepared. Things are underground. Things are diversified, spread out. We don't have the capacity to take Iran off the grid. Iran can take the region off the grid, and in doing so, take the world off the grid. When the world loses 25% permanently, 25% of its oil production, that's the end. Everything shuts down, including America.
Right. Yeah. There's no one would be immune from that. And it seems like President Trump knows that because that has led him to, I guess, mitigate some of his actions. But until this war is over, I fear, and I'm told from some on the inside, that any day he could, just out of irrationality, order such a strike. And so we'll have to see. But, I want to look at one other thing. I know we're running a little bit low on time here. Also, something else that Reza said in his interview here, which I thought was really important. One of the first times in a while I've seen it brought up. President Trump and has continued to say from the beginning, as he has to from 2015 forward, even before he was running for the White House, he always said Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. They can't have a nuclear weapon. Operation Midnight Hammer last year allegedly obliterated it. And then, they were somehow 2 weeks away from it again. And that's why we struck and whatever. Forget about the inconsistencies with that. But still, he says again, they cannot have a nuclear weapon. Well, Reza says here, he goes, some people in the world are suggesting maybe we should.
حماقت ترامپ در جاذبه و اشتیاق مردم جهان به بمب اتم رو بیشتر کرد. یعنی آمریکا گفت من برای جلوگیری از بمب اتم اومدم. الان همه دنیا میگن عجب، پس نه NPT مؤثره، نه عضویت سازمان انرژی هسته‌ای هست و معلوم شد این مسئله اتم خیلی مهمه که آمریکا یه چین جنگ و ما چرا نریم دنبال بمب اتم.
So he's just kind of musing, maybe we should go get the bomb. What do you make of that question?
Well, I mean, we have to take it seriously, but I will remind people that he's not the supreme leader, and the supreme leader has continued to give credence to the fatwa issued by his father, not once but twice, that nuclear weapons are haram, forbidden under Islam, and that Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapon. I think this is a sort of a logical musing done by a man who holds great authority. But I also think it's sort of a warning to Trump to rethink your policies. But the fact of the matter is, Iran's not pursuing a nuclear weapon, and there's no evidence that they've changed their mindset on this. If you take a look at it again, I ask people to just walk through the logic of this. If you remember, we bombed Iran, and Trump called because the heart of this is the 60% enriched uranium that Iran has produced. They have 400 pounds of it that can ostensibly used to make 5 to 10, 15 to 20 kiloton weapons. We called it nuclear dust. And we said we destroyed it. And we had high confidence that it was in Isfahan, in a tunnel complex in the area of Isfahan. So high confidence that we actually put together a JSOC raid that somehow got floundered as a disguised or corrupted pilot rescue mission. But the president himself has acknowledged that they were going into Isfahan. He didn't admit it, but he said, "Oh, we had all that equipment to go deep into the tunnels." Well, that's not a pilot rescue mission. That's a rescue mission to go into Isfahan, go in and grab the stuff. We left a lot of specialized equipment there that is conducive to and the kind of IDs related to specialized personnel that are taking control of material and taking it out. JSOC doesn't launch raids, and you know this, Colonel. JSOC won't launch a raid unless they have high degree of confidence in the intelligence. We can go to high-value targets, snatch operations in Bosnia. They were called off the last second because they didn't know exactly how many stairs up or which way the door turned. So the fact that JSOC entered a raid execution mode means that there's a high degree of confidence that in the Isfahan tunnel that was going to be penetrated was the nuclear material. Now, that tunnel remains sealed. The reason why I bring this up is a lot of these decapitation strikes people are talking about aren't to hit Isfahan again, because we can't. We already did. It's to hit Pickaxe Mountain, a different site, where people say that's now where the Iranian nuclear threat is. Well, wait a minute. How did that threat suddenly manifest itself there when we had high degree confidence that the uranium dust was in Isfahan? There's just a lot of irresponsible speculation going on inside Washington, D.C. is a mark of desperation. Trying to convince the president that if he bombs this target, we resolve the nuclear problem. We don't resolve anything. The best way to resolve Iran's nuclear issue is to come up with a conflict termination plan that respects Iran's legitimate national security, desires. We're not talking about global dominance. We're just talking about saying, hey, we're Iran. We live in the Persian Gulf. You're America. You don't. Get the hell out of our backyard. Why is it okay for us to have the Dunroe Doctrine, the perverted, rethinking of the Monroe Doctrine, where we say nobody can operate in the Southern Hemisphere, and the Iranians can't say, hey, we don't want an aggressive hegemon operating in our backyard. Leave. That's all Iran wants. They want to live in peace. And Iran already showed that they're willing to give up the 60% enriched uranium. Hell, they had a final negotiated deal on February 27th, the day before we bombed them, a surprise attack. So it's not as though Iran's bending over backwards to get a bomb. Iran's actually bending over backwards to make sure the world understands they don't want a bomb. And I just will leave you with this. A non-nuclear Iran defeated the United States and Israel, two nuclear powers. A non-nuclear Iran defeated the United States and Israel, two nuclear powers. Iran doesn't need a nuclear weapon. Iran already won without it.
That is a really powerful statement, and hopefully we can keep it below that threshold. Well, listen, we really appreciate you coming on, giving these sage kinds of observations like that in both these two conflicts, and we really appreciate you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.